Take long, slow breaths. Good.
Good morning, everyone. The sweet smell of pancakes and bacon, and I think there's some hazy smoke in here. It's kind of fabulous. It's good to see you all. It's good to be with you all online. I am the Reverend Ellen Quaadgras and serving here in co-ministry with Kirsten Hunter, our Director of Lifespan Ministry, and in co-ministry with all of you. Let's see. I am glad to be here in this place where we strive to live into our UU value of interdependence, which is our theme this month, which feels somehow appropriately represented by a pancake breakfast, like all those ingredients, all those people, all those different foods, I don't know. But we live into that value of UU interdependence. Particularly, we always start our services with this now, particularly with regard to the land beneath our feet, upon which this sanctuary stands, historically nurtured by the Abenaki and Pennacook peoples. The fact is that this land was never willingly relinquished, and that reminds us to continually seek paths toward healing amidst ongoing struggles for justice. The legacy of our collective past, woven with the threads of disconnection from the earth and from each other, and from sustainable, equitable existence, challenges us to think freshly today. Let this acknowledgement be not just words, but a catalyst for meaningful action towards a more just, connected, and sustainable world. I want to thank everyone who is part of our service today. Lissa Mascio, our worship associate, part of a wonderful team of 8 fellow worship leaders. Susan Adams and Adam Gallant, who are offering our fantastic music today, along with Cathy Okhuysen, who's leading many of our hymns. Jen Del Deo is offering our Time for All Ages, and Jen Leiden is doing everything all the time. Thank you so much for that, Jen, and lots of others behind the scenes doing lots of other things that make our worship possible. We have large print hymnals in the back, as well as assistive listening devices. Ushers can help you with either one. Right after our Time for All Ages, if this is your first time with us, please sign in your young person downstairs. And I now invite you to silence your cell phone as we make some announcements.
Okay, your order of service is full of announcements, but I want to just point out 3 that are happening today after worship. So the Pocket Garden Tour will be selling blooms downstairs as part of a fundraiser for that event, so they'll have a table during social hour. Also having a table today, the associate programs. It's time to apply for the associate programs. So there's an information session happening downstairs during social hour. And this being the first Sunday of the month, that means that there's a drop-in covenant group happening at 11:30 today, I believe in the Emerson room? In the Emerson room. So anyone's invited to join that drop-in covenant group today at 11:30.
My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green
Good morning. If you're watching us remotely, I invite you to light your own candle at home while Reverend Ellen lights the chalice here in the sanctuary. As Reverend Ellen said, the theme for April is interdependence, so I'd like to bring you these words by the prominent German pastor Martin Niemöller. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out. If you would please rise for the mission statement as you're able. It's in your order of service or on your screen. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community. I was raised in a completely non-religious home. My dad was raised Catholic, but fled New York at the age of 18 and left behind his religion as well. My mom had a really rough childhood down south and may have been a Southern Baptist, but by the time I came around, she was following the Little Blue Book, a spiritual practice of Al-Anon. I did live with my grandparents when I was little, 3 or 4, and none of their Roman Catholic ways really stuck as I transitioned back home to my parents at 4. Just some vague memories of an old guy in a white dress drinking wine and talking gibberish. That's back when the devout still attended Mass in Latin down in New York City. So I came to my own belief system. I don't really know how, I can't put a finger on when it happened, but I believe that the universe has a certain energy connecting us all, and I believe the energy you put out is the energy that you reap, like karma or serendipity. But also, bad things happen, and maybe there is some sort of reason for each of those bad things, often a reason we can't fathom or see. I'm not really a transactional spiritualist, like I do something good and then something good happens to me. That certainly has not been my experience. I try to put out good energy when I can. I volunteer and try and engage in my community. I hold doors for strangers and say bless you to everyone, including my cat. He sneezes a lot, too. I put my money where my mouth is, quite literally, when it comes to my moral center in my career. And I'm very aware of the ripples I'm sending out and hopeful that they're creating good for others, even if I don't see it happening. But a lot of bad things have happened, both in my childhood and to myself and my own child. Like, a lot. Some may say we have really bad luck, but every time something bad happens, people step up. Not usually the people I think should step up, like my immediate family, but people. For example, when my daughter Leah was 5 years old in kindergarten, I lost my job during the recession, which hit Arizona particularly hard. We were living up in the mountains in Prescott at the time. It felt pretty dire at the time. I had to cash out all of my retirement savings, trade in my cool Jeep for a truly craptastic Saturn sedan. I applied for food stamps, although I qualified for a whopping $16 a month. I picked up odd jobs at the YMCA gym and the daycare to supplement the meager unemployment I was getting. But ultimately, we were okay. My landlord cut me some slack. I met a guy at the gym who was a mechanic and helped me keep that old Saturn on the road, and even installed a working radio with a tape deck. I had friends who offered assistance and a community around me that helped us get by, that I continued to volunteer in. I remember that Christmas specifically. Money was pretty tight, but I still had Leah pick a star from the community giving tree, and we bought a small something for another child in need. Because no matter how scary that 8-month span felt to me in the moment, we had a roof over our head, we had clothes on our back, we had food on the table, and I knew that our future was going to be okay, and it was falling into place thanks to my education and the resources that I did have, and was lucky to have. Everything's connected. We all depend on each other, whether we know it or like it or not. What goes around comes around, even if you don't always see it. So no matter what bad things happen, I try to continue to put that good energy out there, and I know it will come to fruition, whether it's for me or somebody else. Now, if you would like to please rise and join us in opening hymn number 22, Dear Weaver of Our Lives' Design.
Dear weaver of our life's design, whose patterns I'll obey, with skillful fingers gently guide the sturdy threads that will survive the tangle of our days. Take up the fabric of our lives with hands that gently hold. Bind in the ragged edge that care would sunder and that pain would tear, and mend our raveling souls. Let eyes that in the plainest cloth a hidden beauty see, discern in us our richest hues, show us the patterns we may use to set our spirits free.
It is time for a story, and I would love to invite anybody, young or old, to come forward to hear the story a little closer. And our story today is a book, and the pictures will be on this nice big TV so that everybody can hopefully take it all in. The story is called The Invisible Web, and it's written by Patrice Karst. The illustrations are by Joanne Lew-Vriethoff. The very best news ever has begun to spread all over the world, one heart at a time. Shout it from the mountaintops. Every single one of us is connected to those we love by invisible strings. That means Giovanna and her daddy are always together, even though he moved to a new house. Omar can feel the tugs of love from his parents, even though he is living far away at school. Mr. Chang still feels Mrs. Chang close by, even though she died such a very long time ago. And you, at this very moment, may feel the string of someone close to you, even though they aren't there. You can't see it, but it is real. Our strings reach to everyone we know. They travel far and wide to families and friends, classmates and coaches, to bus drivers and babysitters, neighbors and pets, to aunts and uncles and grandparents and grandchildren, and everyone from your church and countless other people. And all of those people have hundreds of strings. Soaring high over rocky peaks and across the 7 seas, deep into jungles and valleys, and winding through the busiest of cities, All these strings crisscross one another and create a nest that covers the planet, interlacing us together, cradling us forever. The invisible web. The web has no borders and wraps every continent. Within it live butterflies and flowers, starfish and seahorses, lions and ants, rivers and snowstorms, and all human beings. Giovanna, Omar, Mr. Chang, and of course, you and me too. Some say it even reaches to our ancestors and to those we cherish in the beyond. One tug on a string sends love to every one of us woven together in this divine tapestry. And that means just one good deed travels across the entire web. Everything is linked. But sometimes folks forget. When they can't feel their strings, they forget about our invisible web. And that's when strings get tangled up. Like when lonely Louisa isn't invited to sit with anyone at her school at lunchtime. Or when sad Stefano wishes his friend Marcos wasn't so bossy when they played. Or when Mrs. Patel struggles at work without help and she just wants to quit. Even violence and war can erupt when too many of us forget the web. When strings are ignored, they can become weak and begin to unravel. But the more people who care for the web, the stronger it remains. The web feels like every parent since the beginning of time, holding and protecting each one of us in millions of gentle arms. What could be stronger than all those hands holding us close? So many supportive fingers can always find a way to untangle strings so that love can flow again. But it's up to every one of us to spread the word. Our time is right now. As we tell our family and friends, sisters will remind brothers, who will write to cousins, who will call their great-grandparents, who will just nod and smile as if they have always known. If we remember the web and tug at it often, nobody will ever be left out. We will see others more clearly. The people of the world will look into each other's eyes. They will smile at one another. And when one of them cries, they will all want to help. And they do. Marcos apologizes to Stefano, who forgives his friend, and they even have more fun playing. Someone helps Mrs. Patel at work and tells her what a great job she's doing. She remembers that she's important and feels happy. And Louisa feels warm and bubbly inside when a few of the kids in her class ask her to join them under the banyan tree for lunch. She knows right then that the invisible web is real. After school, Louisa cries with joy as she strokes her cat, who purrs the news to the stars. And the stars whisper the secret to the clouds, who share it with the songbirds, who serenade the world with this exquisite melody of love at the start of each morning and all during the day, until, as the invisible web glitters in the magic of twilight, the owls take over and hoot the news throughout the night. The invisible web is alive. Its time is right now. It breathes as we breathe, pulsating all over our earth, the single heartbeat of life and love. And do you know what that makes us all? Pause for dramatic effect. It makes us all one very big family. And there's a PS from the author, and I couldn't agree more. P.S. I just love being right here in the very middle of the invisible web with you. And now, let's go downstairs and do some more webbing.
Every week at the Offertory, we each give what we are able in order to support South Church, the building, the staff, the congregants, and the greater community. In an effort coordinated by our social justice associates, each month we share that collection with a different nonprofit organization. During the month of April, the collection will be shared with Seacoast Pathways, a place for adults living with mental illness and/or brain injuries to come together for purposeful work and meaningful relationships within a clubhouse model. A clubhouse is a restorative environment for people who have had their lives drastically disrupted and need the support of others who believe that recovery from mental illness and successfully managing the effects of a brain injury is possible for all. Learn more about Seacoast Pathways at granitepathwaysnewhampshire.org. You can donate in many ways this morning. If you happen to have some cash with you, please feel free to use the collection baskets that will be passed momentarily. But if you don't have any cash with you, you can use that nifty new QR code in your order of service, or our mobile app, Vanco, or you can click the donate button on the website, or you can mail a good old-fashioned check to the office. The offering will now be gratefully received.
I have a prayer for us, but before I offer it, I want to mention something that slipped through the invisible web of service preparation, which was an announcement about the associate programs downstairs. Their beautiful web of service that they offer is going to be accessible downstairs for people to ask questions and engage with. They'll be in a separate room down in the fellowship hall. Let's gather our hearts and minds in a spirit of prayer or meditation. In this moment of togetherness, I want to offer you some wonderful news, the arrival of new light and joy into Theo Wiegand and Elizabeth Kane's life through the presence of Jack Carl Kane Wiegand, who began his brand new journey of life just this past Wednesday. May his path be filled with love and discovery and the warmth of this community's care. And we also hold in our hearts Suzette Wilson, who has just transitioned into hospice care. May she and all who love her find comfort, peace, and strength in knowing that they all are enveloped by our collective support and compassion. In the wider arc of our shared world, we reflect upon the ongoing crisis in Israel and Gaza. Today is exactly 6 months since the horrific October 7th attack by Hamas on southern Israel. And it is 6 months since the Israeli military began its devastating response in Gaza. And while there is this week a glimmer of hope for a ceasefire, we must, in line with our national denomination, continue to advocate for it and for unrestricted humanitarian aid, and continue to do what we can to work for lasting peace and justice in this ravaged part of the world. As we navigate the complexities of our world and of our individual experiences, those wonders and challenges unnamed but nevertheless deeply felt, may each of us remember we are not alone. Our joys are multiplied, and our burdens are lessened when we share them here together in community. In a spirit of love, may we hold these truths close to our hearts today and always. Amen. I now invite you into a personal time of meditation or reflection. If you wish, you can use this time to light a candle, a symbol of the Spirit within and among us. Please remember, if you are going through a difficult time, I am here. Kirsten is here. Your pastoral associates are here. If you need any one of us, please fill out a card in your pew or come talk to one of us after the service. May this time deepen and connect us to one another and all that lives in our hearts today. When feeling fatigue or despair, indifference or resistance, what nourishes your soul? That is a question from a class I'm taking called Beloved Conversations. And while the class is designed to help white people reflect on our spiritual connection with race, it feels like a question for anyone wanting to be truly present in this world right now. For anyone wanting to get closer to what's true. When you're feeling fatigue or despair, what nourishes you? This question is part of a whole section from that class called Nourishment for the Journey. The implication is that the journey will not be easy. This section is filled with selections from artists and musicians like Tracy Chapman and Lin-Manuel Miranda. This intro lesson also includes the invitation to connect with our ancestors, parents, grandparents, great-great-grandparents, people who could perhaps nourish us for this difficult journey. If I'm honest, just a couple years ago, I would have skipped right past all that. Lame, not interesting. My dad once did a genealogy of the family history and generated these gigantic paper charts that he meticulously hung on the wall outside of the study in my parents' home, which I managed to studiously avoid every single time I walked past them in that hallway. But in this moment, in this class, I paused and gave the ancestor question its due. Because I could use some nourishment. And while I may not have connected with my dad's genealogy charts, his presence has, in the years since his death, begun to feel like an invisible string. I've talked before about my practice of inviting him into places that feel hard or dark for me, where I feel fatigue or despair, indifference or resistance. And lately, I find myself inviting in my whole darn family. Sometimes people who are still around find their way in because, hey, it takes what it takes, and sometimes it takes a village. It takes a web, like in our story, For All Ages. Still, the practice of bringing that village to heart and mind does not always come naturally to me. It takes intention and focus, and even then, it can feel elusive. Like there's something blocking me, like my invisible web receivers have gotten all jammed up. Like my receptors got clogged. I cannot always feel that tug. I cannot remember the village. I can't seem to remember. I am not some isolated fragment in a dangerous universe just fighting for my survival, just making it through the day. Still, that is not exactly the place from which I want to live my life. So, given I like this idea of ancestors because it reminds me not only that I am not alone, but that there is a web of history, a web of relationships, a web of stories behind me and within and behind every person I meet. Whether I can see the strings or not, whether the other person can see them or not, they are there. They are in us. They're with us. Those ancestors, those roots grown underground, the beautiful and the maybe not so beautiful. Roots grown in good times and in times that maybe were not not so good. I think of my grandfather on my mother's side. I loved him so much, and my grandmother too. And yet, their lives had their challenges. My grandfather was born in Germany in 1906. His dad sent him to the Netherlands with his mother and siblings on the brink of World War I. These were troubling times. Circumstances were very difficult upon arrival, and his mother could not care for him. He was sent to live with an uncle. He was just 8 years old. I feel an emptiness just thinking about it as I picture him without his mom, without his dad, in a brand new country. I picture him inconsolable. I wonder what that did to his connection of his web to his web. Still, as an adult, he and my grandmother, my Oma and Opa, they made a beautiful home together, raised 3 daughters, loved on 6 of us grandkids. The warmth in their voices and the warmth of that home, I carry that with me still. It was not until long after his death that we discovered my Opa had not always been faithful in his marriage, that in fact he fathered a child outside of it. Was it a one-night stand, a long affair? Nobody knows. On the one hand, it is a strangely beautiful gift to have another aunt who looks just a bit like my mom. On the other hand, I wonder what hunger led him in that direction, the weight of which he must have felt for the rest of his long life. I wonder what led him to take an action that would have devastated my Oma if she had ever known. That maybe did devastate her because maybe she did know. Maybe you too have ancestors whose choices you wonder about what set them up, what led them there, what it did to others, or maybe even how it impacted you. I think about the ancestors that go way back, the ones who laid the foundation for this country, the ones I'm learning more about in my beloved conversations class as I prepare for our service learning trip to Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. Learning not just about the specifics of policies, actions, and strategies that devastated indigenous communities, that insatiable thirst for land and labor, but learning also about them, about the people who came to these shores, about their lives, their journeys, their choices, or the lack of them, about their connection to their web, which for many apparently got stripped away before they even made their journey here. In his book, Roots Deeper Than Whiteness, author David Dean describes how the communal, earth-based culture of English peasantry, for example, was systematically hollowed out in the 16th and 17th century in Europe. How economic pressures led to cruel practices, policies, and propaganda intentionally designed to weaken family bonds, destroy the fabric of extended community, and get people to move where the labor was needed, locally or overseas. Many of the people who ultimately crossed the ocean did so in desperation, Dean writes, with their traditional way of life shattered, clinging to meaningful community identity only in memory. In other words, these people had to sever the ties with their homeland, with their extended families, with their place on the web. I wonder what unfillable hunger this left in them, where homes and loved ones used to be. I wonder about the endless expansion that marked the actions of these ancestors and the insatiable drive for growth that marks our culture now. Not to mention our susceptibility to addiction, the limitless desire to fill that empty spot where expansive human connection used to be. And all that restlessness, disconnection, and desire for distraction this creates, this endless searching for something, for more, which jams up relationship receptors, blocks the very web of people we need to right ourselves. Instead, there is fatigue or despair, indifference or resistance. As I'm thinking about this, I was reminded of Resmaa Menakem's theory that the reason white people blew trauma through the people they met here and brought here was because of the trauma they had been through themselves. And there have been forces that have blown through lives and communities that are bigger than any one of us. But there are also forces that hold people together, that nourish us and stabilize us, that give us strength for this day's journey. Those are bigger than us, too. Resmaa Menakem also notes trauma may get passed down, but so does resilience. Sometimes hurt places heal. Sometimes people make good choices after bad. Sometimes blocked places open, new life breathes in. We can breathe in new life. Actions of ancestors cannot be undone, but their legacies can. Their stories can. Even our relationships with them can shift. There's another article from Beloved Conversations by Kenneth Collier, many of whose ancestors had been slave owners. He struggles in this article with how to honor his ancestors as his African American friends insist he must. How can I honor these slave-holding ancestors, he asks. Here's where he lands. To honor the ancestors is to embrace their heritage and carry it forward in our turn. And when ancestors have been dishonorable, what we can do is change the story. Bend the arc, weave new threads, honor them by honoring ourselves. I take this in, it rings very true, but I have to stay open to what is so that I can do that. I have to turn towards what is dark, what is hard, to connect and reconnect, unblock blocked channels, unclog clogged receptors. That is the first step to taking wise action in our troubled and troubling world. Sometimes just staying open takes everything I've got. As so often seems to be the case, those who have suffered the most carry the deepest insights and sometimes offer a peek into their experience, into their wisdom, and into the healing they have done or are doing. And that Sometimes they offer that to the world, and that is a gift to us all. As in the series, Reservation Dogs, a clip of which Kirsten showed to the service learning trip group just a few weeks ago. In the clip I'm about to show you, Willie Jack, one of the main characters in this series, is meeting with Hotke, her aunt, in prison. Willie Jack is distraught. Her tight-knit friend circle is falling apart after the tragic death of her cousin. The group is breaking up. They're floundering. And Willie Jack is floundering. The devastations wrought on indigenous communities, you can see it weighing on her and how it weighs on them all. So close your eyes, Hotke tells her in this meeting, and turn toward the dark.
Take long, slow breaths. Good. Just listen to your breathing for a second. Remember the stories I told you when you were growing up about the people we come from. Generations of medicine people. Caretakers. These are the ones who held us together as we arrived from our homelands. The healers who carried us and buried us as we marched. Men and women whose songs led us through the dark. They're watching you, my girl. You don't need me. You have them. This is the power we carry. When you really pray, they're all around you. All the time.
Oh, shit.
Takes focus, though. Intent. Open your eyes.
Holy fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck.
There is a web of stories, a web of people that we come from, a web of people who stand behind us and with us, healers who carry us, witness us, as we take in the dark and begin to change the story in the present. Take long, slow breaths. Reconnect to the strength of the strongest, to the hearts of the most open, and to all the answers whom our actions can honor now. It takes focus, though, and intent. May we open our eyes. Amen. And let us join together in our closing hymn, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Please rise in body or in spirit.
Speak we for thousands. You can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
One last plug to visit the associate program fair downstairs. I highly recommend becoming a worship associate. And as we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment, these we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
May love guide us. May hope find us. May all our ancestors hold us as we honor them by living with focus and intent and courage to right the wrongs in our world today. Amen.